Music gear limitations suck. Let's defeat them. As soon as I shout out today's patron, and that patron shout out goes to Galactic Tapes. Thank you so very much for the support. Also, speak of the devil, Galactic Tapes will be performing the opening act for my upcoming free live stream concert coming very soon, Friday, August 21st at 7 p.m. Pacific time, and then the next day, Saturday, August 22nd at 11 a.m. Pacific time. Hopefully, no matter where you live in the world, you'll be able to catch at least one of the shows. It's gonna be a really great time. Hope to see you there. Now, let's get started. So this is my Roland TD-17 drum module, and if we pull back a bit, you can see my TD-17 drum kit. I actually did a video on this just a week or two ago, talking about how I got rid of the rack and put it on like stable drum stands and just tried to get everything feeling a bit more real. And it's been going pretty well. However, it's been going so well that I've found myself wanting to add new elements to the kit, expand it a bit. Unfortunately, the TD-17 only has two extra pad inputs. One is just for the second crash cymbal, and then there's one lone auxiliary input. I'm already using that second crash slot just for my second crash, and the auxiliary input I'm using for a splash cymbal. So I'm out of physical inputs already. This is a limitation of the TD-17 module that just kind of sucks, and it's really just, you know, imposed by Roland just so you'll buy the next module. This is not an attack on Roland. In fact, I love Roland and I love almost everything of theirs that I've ever used. But it is just kind of an unfortunate fact in the world of music gear and really just everything. You know, there's always a reason to buy the next model up. And in this case, one of the big reasons was extra inputs. But today, I'm going to try and attempt to circumvent those limitations and add some more pads to this kit. As you can see, I've actually added a fourth tom pad up here on the left, another PDX-8. I don't have it plugged in yet, but it was important to me that I got the positioning right because I want this to be a high tom, and then I want to bring in this CY5 as an auxiliary hi-hat, sometimes known as an X-hat, right here next to the ride cymbal. And the way I'm going to try to do that is with MIDI. You see, on these electronic drum modules, a lot of times they give you two zones on your toms. You typically get a sound on the head and a sound on the rim. But when I'm playing an electronic drum set, hell, even when I'm playing an acoustic drum set, I'm very, very, very rarely hitting the rims of my toms. It's just not really a common thing. However, you can actually tell this drum module and a lot of other modules to treat those two different zones on a tom pad as two completely separate sounds, two different pads almost entirely. And each of those has their own MIDI note number, so they can each be triggered individually. So I want to go in and actually assign sounds to the rims of these toms that I want to actually map to that cymbal pad that I'm going to put there, or this extra tom pad up here. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to turn the rim gain down to 0 on all of these pads, meaning that the rims of the toms just won't trigger, and it'll probably just default to the head sound. The next part of the plan is to get those two pads actually hooked up. And to do that, I'm going to use my old Roland TD4 module. This has a snake cable, much like the TD-17, and I'm just going to find two inputs that work and plug them into those two different pads and set them up to trigger in the TD4. But we're not going to hear any audio from the TD4. Instead, we're going to go out of this 5-pin MIDI jack on the TD4, and you might think then we'd go directly into the MIDI in of the TD-17. Unfortunately, here we find another kind of false limitation of the TD-17. It does not have physical 5-pin MIDI in, just MIDI out. This is possibly my biggest frustration with the TD-17 and with so many beginner to even intermediate level electronic drum kits. They ditch the 5-pin MIDI in. I've looked at some of the F-Note kits, and even some of their higher end modules don't have 5-pin MIDI in. It just seems so silly to me for people who want to expand their drum kit or even trigger those sounds with something else. Like maybe I want to finger drum and trigger these sounds with something like the 404 Mark II. I'd have to find a workaround for that. Luckily, the workaround for that is the same workaround that we're going to use for our problem today. And that workaround is the fact that the TD-17 can do MIDI in over USB. In this case, it's a big old Type B connector, like from a printer. So I haven't tried this yet, but in theory, that means all I need is some sort of MIDI host that can convert that USB MIDI signal into 5-pin MIDI, or more accurately the other way around, convert a 5-pin signal into USB MIDI. And I know there are a lot of different things out there that can do it, but the one that I had closest to me at the moment was this Morningstar MC6 Pro. This is a MIDI pedal / brain that does a lot, but today we're just going to use it as a USB MIDI host. So I'm going to go ahead and plug this into power, and then I'm going to plug this 5-pin MIDI cable into the MIDI in of the MC6 Pro. I'm going to plug the other end of that cable into the MIDI out of the TD4 module. Then we've got this USB-C cable, which is actually the opposite end of that USB Type B cable that we plugged into the TD17. And this is gonna go into the MIDI host jack of the MC6 Pro. Now let's go ahead and find a cable on the TD4 Snake that reaches all the way to that high tom. Looks like it might be the Crash 2 connector. And yeah, I know it's super messy down here. We will fix it if we get it working. Okay, so now let's power on the TD4. If I go menu and pad settings, I can then tell that it's not a PD8, it's instead a PD8X. And it says crash and the bow of the symbol. Yep, that is the trigger that we want. Now we're gonna go up to MIDI settings and we're going to check out the MIDI note number. So it's on 49 or C#3. Let's go ahead and just max it out so we don't forget it. Let's set it to 127. So that's the MIDI note number that pad is going to transmit, all right? We can then also go and check our MIDI channel, which is channel 10. So we'll need to bear that in mind as well. That's standard though, so it should work. Really quick on the TD17, I just copied the kit into a new slot. So if I mess anything up, it won't actually destroy the kits that I've been working on for my upcoming live show. So now we're gonna work with this pad right here, this tom, because essentially I want to take the rim sound and change it to an actual tom sound and then just put it on this note number here. So let's go setup and then pad settings. Yep, that is a PDX8. We're gonna go advanced and then rim gain, we're gonna set to 0. So I know you can't hear anything, but you can see when I hit the pad, it's showing that there's no sound. I actually can't hear anything either, and that's what I want. I want no gain set to the actual pad, or rim of the pad rather. So now, we're gonna go assign. Now when I hit pad select, it's going to take me to rim. So now I'm messing with the rim settings for this drum. And what we're gonna do is go to other. Then we're gonna go MIDI note. And now I'm on tom 1 rim, and we want 127. So now in theory, when I hit this pad, I should hear the rim of this tom, but I don't. And I'm now realizing I think it's because we forgot to change the MIDI channel of the kit itself. So settings, MIDI, yeah, channel 10. There we go. Now let's try it. No, still nothing. I'm looking through settings now just to see if I missed anything. Now we start to see what I'm talking about. These limitations kind of suck. It's just silly. One simple 5-pin input for MIDI would have solved all of these problems. And I think every drum module should have 5-pin MIDI out and in. The next thing I'm going to do is to verify that my MC6 Pro is actually set up to throw the MIDI in over 5-pin out to the host jack. Maybe that's a setting I toggled off, who knows? Okay, so it turns out that was indeed the case. I didn't have the 5-pin input set to go out to the host port. I'm gonna have to toggle that off before the actual live set, or I will have some MIDI loop issues. Okay, moment of truth. Hey, I hear sound. It's set to the head of Crash 2. It's mimicking this. That's so weird. I wonder why. Back down on the TD4, we're gonna go and find MIDI note number. Oh, looks like we changed the wrong MIDI note number. Interesting, 127. Okay, so now I hit this pad right here, and that's the head of tom 1. Now I hit right here. Beautiful, it's the rim of tom 1. So now I can change this sound to whatever I want. In this case, I just set it to match this tom here, and then I'm gonna go in and tune it way up, and we're set. This is pretty cool, I'm not gonna lie. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get that hi-hat pad set up the same exact way, and then I will cut to a clip of me playing the drums, and you'll see that it's just working. I'm really excited about this. I've been meaning to do this for a very long time. Okay, so good news. I did get this hi-hat working. Sometimes it chokes itself. I couldn't find a way in the module to actually make the hi-hat sound not be paired to the hi-hat like pedal. So I want this to be permanently slushy, right? Which means just slightly open. But anytime I would hit it and then I'd put my foot on the hi-hat pedal over here, it would also close these hi-hats. So what I did is I actually went in and made a custom sample on my computer. Then I imported that sample into the TD17 and assigned it to the head of the splash cymbal, the aux jack, which is what I have this mapped to. Sometimes it still chokes itself. I'm not exactly sure why, but let's do a little bit of drumming and just have some fun, shall we? So as you can see, it's not ideal. I still need to work out some kinks with that slushy X-hat there. But we were able to circumnavigate those limitations and accomplish the goal. We've got the high tom working, and then we've got the X-hat kind of working. We're just gonna ignore the sound of the high tom because it's just this tom sample tuned up. Electronic drums really aren't designed to have toms that high, at least these modules. I believe it sounds a lot better in the newer Roland modules. Hopefully that is foreshadowing for what's to come in the somewhat near future. Now, of course, the part of this video that we're just gonna sort of brush past is the absolute mess and disaster down here that we've created. Obviously, a much smaller USB MIDI host would really help, and then maybe using something like the Alesis Trigger IO or some other trigger to MIDI device instead of an old module would work a little better. That way you don't have the rest of this snake all over the place. I do have the Trigger IO, but it's out in the barn and we're using it for at least testing lights right now. So we'll see if that makes its way into this setup. Again, a lot of this could have been avoided if the TD17 module here simply had a 5-pin MIDI in as well as a 5-pin MIDI out. I don't think a 5-pin MIDI in should be a feature that you have to pay thousands of dollars for on your module. Anyway, I'm happy with today's results. I think I can dial out the auto choking on that hi-hat. I'll figure it out eventually. I would like to use this kit setup, maybe even with an additional pad or two for Freebeat Live 2026. We'll see if it happens. If not, I know the TD17 is extremely reliable just on its own without any expansion. That's just a little too small of a kit. I want to play something bigger. Anyway, I do hope you found this video informative or at least entertaining. If you did, be sure to leave a like on it. If not, you can always leave a dislike. That's okay too. Doesn't hurt my feelings, just makes me try that much harder next time. Either way, be sure to hit that subscribe button, ring that notification bell. Thank you all so very much for being here. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.